Hey guys, and welcome back to another Broken No Game video. Today's video is going to be dedicated to DPSs and essentially how to be, more efficient as a DPS. And hopefully this will help you understand what DPSs should be doing during PvE or PvP situations. So the first thing we're going to do, upgrade and sell, upgrading class. And the reason why you want to be here is we want to decide which class we want to be, or essentially what class that we want to be in the future. So this sort is going to be down arrow weapon type, and the reason why I have it this way so I can see essentially which classes that I have. And even if I have more breakers than polearm users per se, I still want to use the breakers, for example, or still want to use the polearm users because that is the weapon that I like the most in the game. Now, the biggest thing that I want to take note of is that in PvE specifically, single target will be better. And you're wondering, why is single target going to be better? And that's just because you are hitting bosses and you are hitting enemies for higher damage one at a time. And usually during a boss phase, you are only hitting one opponent. And during, the earlier phases, you are essentially focusing on one enemy in particular so that you can mitigate the damage across the board. So that is why in PvE, single target is much better, because you want to kill one particular opponent as fast as possible. It's essentially more bursty. In Calo, the reason why you want more AoE stuff is specifically because you want more chances to essentially apply more pressure to the enemy. So as a crusher or as a polearm user, you will have more chances to essentially apply more pressure because you're killing more people at once. In the current meta that we are in, it is hard to be a quote-unquote better DPS in Calo for AoE just because of the fact that single targets have tier 4 skills and the highest skill that AoE can go to is tier 3. Now, and also because there are not a lot of weapons in the AoE pool currently, as in there's not a lot of featured spears, there's not a lot of featured hammers, etc, etc. In the future it'll change, but that is just something to know. And if you're wondering, why am I a crusher and I'm not hitting as much, that is just because the skills are not yet available yet, and because the weapons are not yet available. That doesn't mean that you should drop the crusher class just because there's not as much availability. You should stick to your class and keep focusing on that class, because in the long term it will help you. Just note that it'll be later, right? Just note that. So now let's talk about gear, since we've already started talking about it, and let's select my Alice. You'll notice that my stats are kind of sporadic because my physical attack is higher than my magical attack. Now, before we get into that, as a Vanguard, as a DPS, you care about every single skill, every single physical attack, every single stat that you have pretty much has to be optimized. Versus other classes where, a Sorkin Minstrel is the closest thing to a DPS in stats because they have to worry about their physical attack and physical defense, magical attack and magical defense. They don't have to worry about HP. As a Vanguard, you need to worry about your HP because your HP decides how long you can stay in a fight and whether or not you get one shot. If you want to check your HP during Calo, you're going to go to battle, and then pretty much in battle, there's going to be an icon that says your guild name. You click that guild name icon, and then after that you'll be put in a drop down page where you can essentially see what classes or what is your HP. So let's go back to gear, and yes, I want to be a paladin, right? I have a lot of swords, and we talked about it. There are more swords. They're essentially sword meta right now just because they are pretty much flooding the pool right now. In the future you can pivot, all right? Just understand what these classes can do in the future so you can properly pivot or properly switch as more banners roll and roll. So if you want to be a AoE person, you will roll more on AoE banners. You know what I mean? As a whale, it doesn't matter, all right? And as a dolphin, you should technically care as well. But as a whale, it doesn't matter. Just, go nuts. Anyways, so weapons. Dauntless Courage. Let's talk about it. Dauntless Courage is by far the most important Calo skill. If you are a PvE focus, you should still take into account Dauntless Courage, even though it doesn't do anything for you, because I'm assuming even though you are PvE centric, you'll still be participating in Calo because, you know, you want free stuff, because Calo still gives free stuff whether you win or lose. You still get free stuff, yeah. So also, as more and more people jump into Calo, and as you essentially grow in the game, you will develop a team that you will like. So eventually, if you keep playing this game, you will eventually find a good Calo or a good guild that'll help you progress in Calo. So as a PvE like main, just understand that Dauntless Courage still matters, alright? So, reason why Dauntless Courage matters. You guys probably know, fixed chance to moderately increase damage. Okay, cool. You got that out of the way. The biggest thing is that Dauntless Courage does not stack. What does that mean? The percentage or the fixed chance text, does not stack with other Dauntless Courage. So if you have 10 Dauntless Courage weapons, it doesn't mean that you stack Dauntless Courage 10 times. No, the only thing that this means is that one Dauntless Courage and another Dauntless Courage and another Dauntless Courage can trigger at any time when you cast a weapon. So the more Dauntless Courages that you have, the more chances you have of proccing Dauntless Courage, because this passive aid skill applies to your entire grid. So that's why it's so important in Calo, because you'll have more chances to increase your damage. More chances does not stack. Alright. Now the next thing is skills. In general, whether it's story or Calo, tier skills and why it's so important. So the way a skill calculates damage is based off of your character's overall stats. So that means if it's a tier 4 and let's say the stats are really bad, it doesn't matter because it is using your character stats as a whole. So you can use everything that you have in order to cast this tier 4 Torch of Destruction skill. So what does this mean? Essentially, aim for weapons that have tier 4, ideally. In the future, you know, AoEs will have tier 4 as well, but tier 3 is the highest for AoE classes, yeah? So just pick up as many tier 3s as you want. So for example, technically, it might be breaking some hearts, but Iron Pipe is a not great weapon. And that's because it is a tier 1 skill, and skills cannot tier up on weapons. What does that mean? This Rampart of Black Ice can never become a tier 2. This Dauntless Courage can never become a tier 2. Now, it will always pretty much deal really bad damage in Calo. Essentially, this thing is just a stat stick. Alright? Just know that it is a stat stick, and it's probably the weapon that will get replaced the fastest on your grid, even though it is a stat stick. And that's just because its skill is like bad. So you probably can't kill anyone with this thing. You even like in PvE, you can't kill anyone with this thing. In Calo, you're not going to kill anyone with this thing unless they're like already dead. Alright? And the biggest thing is you want tier 3 skills at, like tier 2 skills at the very minimum. At the very minimum, you want tier 2 skills, but ideally you have tier 3 for AoE. And of course, tier 4, single target, tier 4 and tier 3 are your biggest options. And the reason why I want us to focus on that is if you're hitting like a wet noodle, it's just because you're using tier 2 and tier 1 abilities. And that's why technically A ranks are kind of, they're even more worse just because they have tier 1 abilities. Now if an A rank for some weird reason has a tier 3 ability, then yeah, just go crazy on it. But I've never seen an A rank that has a tier 3 ability, and I'm pretty sure someone can prove me wrong in the comments because it's probably like available. There's a tier 3 on an A rank, but I haven't seen it yet. I'll be more than happy to see it because that's actually a good thing for people who are pulling, you know, and using A rank weapons. So now that we know how weapon damage, I don't have the formula, and I'm not going to say that I'm going to give the formula for as far as like how damage is calculated based off of tiers. Just know that tier 3 and tier 4 are your goals as a DPS, and always getting Dauntless Courage. So the last part of this video, and the thing that I wanted to cover after I've been so long-winded with skills, is we're going to go into events, and we're going to Memory of Dolls. We're going to do verse 12. Now, as a DPS, your main focus is going to be enemy type priority in PvE, yeah? Your main focus is killing the wolf, killing the dragon, killing the golem, killing the snake, and killing the orc as soon as you see one. So in this example, we're going to go straight for the lizard because technically it's a dragon, right? And the reason being is because they have a higher chance of pretty much killing your team. And as a DPS, if the enemy team is pretty much killing your entire team, it's most likely that you are the perpetrator because you're not killing the appropriate enemies fast enough so that everyone can survive. And this is why single target is so important, is because as soon as an enemy is dead, you pretty much alleviate the pressure for everyone else, right? You alleviate the tension, the pressure is no longer there, and essentially everyone can relax now a lot better. Now, obviously, it's different in PvP, right? So, major threats, kill them first no matter what. Credits to Yukina and Justin from gamepress. Thank you so much for pretty much essentially creating this. And you understand their weaknesses, right? Notice that a majority of the high priority like enemy types are magical attack weakness. So you want to essentially focus ideally on, being magical attack as a single target. Now, you don't have to. I'm just saying like that is something that you can look into. Because regardless of what happens, whether you're using magical attack and physical attack, at the end of the day, it's your personal preference. Because if you're dealing more damage, you're just dealing more damage. You know what I mean? Whether the opponent is weak to it or not. So, let's talk about PvE and targeting. You will aim for the weakest link. Alright? You will aim for the weakest person in Calo. In Calo, you do not aim for the strongest person. And why is that? Sorks can debuff the strongest person if they want to, but there should be one dedicated support debuffing someone that is the strongest in the team. And the rest of the Sorks will be focusing on debuffing the weakest opponents. And why is that? Why would we do such a thing? And that's just because a person who's dead is dealing less damage than someone who's like invincible, if you know what I mean. Like, you will be more effective essentially destroying the enemy team when they have less people who are able to attack you. Alright? So in Calo, you aim for the weakest link. Whatever you have to do, go scout the guild, look for the weakest member, and then you just you aim for that person. And I'm sorry to like say that, but like that's the way Calo is. It is a PvP centric game, so you will aim for the person who is essentially not able to, not at the same level as the other DPSs, because that's just the fastest way to be more effective, and you essentially kill them from casting demon buff. And sometimes worse, and I apologize if this has happened to me, you pretty much lose fate and you leave the game on auto and you walk away. I understand that feeling. I've lost 5 times in a row during B rank. Alright, I know the loss, it hurts. And that's just because, we don't have the greatest of supports. So if you're a support, you need a guild, we need you as well. By the way, our DPSs are doing fantastic, as you can see, but most of our supports, they're not available, but it's fine. Alright, it's totally fine, I understand. This game isn't for everyone, I understand that, but this is a game that I love, and hopefully I can share more information with everyone. So let's recap really quick. As far as everything goes, quickest way, upgrade classes. When you're in upgrade classes, pick the class that you want to be. PvE, single target, PvP, AoE. As far as gear goes, you always want Dauntless Courage on all of your gear. Dauntless Courage everywhere, whether you're PvE or PvP, because you'll be more effective in the long term for the game. And ideally pick tier 3 and tier 4 skills, regardless if you're an AoE or a single target. AoE, always aim for tier 3. Single targets, aim for tier 4. Nothing less. Well, you can aim like one tier below that, but don't go any farther than that. And then as far as PvE, enemy priority, you know, this. And then in PvP, always aim for the weakest link, just because it'll be more effective in the long run for Kalo. Stops them from getting Shinma, makes you more effective, makes less pressure for the supports. Everyone's just happy in Kalo when there are less people trying to kill you. Anyways, that's it for this video. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz. And I will see you in the next one.